Heuet, who's the artist and author of the graphic novel adaptation of Marcel Proust's Auf der Suche nach der verlorenen Zeit. So you told me before that it's not your first time in Germany.
No, it's the seventh the seventh time I come in Germany. I came in Köln and Hamburg, Essen, Münster, Heidelberg. At each time I met people very interested by people of the Marcel Proust and people who were interested by comics and by the adaptation, because it's a subject, a topic, a rather new topic, in fact, to adapt, and a strange topic to try to adapt Proust.
So, if you come anywhere in Germany and you tell people, I'm doing something about Marcel Proust,
yes.
do people know who Marcel Proust is, or do you have to
yes.
explain?
I was very surprised. In fact, in Germany, people almost know better Proust than in France. You know, in France, people know Proust as a cultural phenomena, and people are very proud of having Proust as a hero. But people do not read Proust. You know, you have the same thing. I was told that there was the same thing with Goethe. Cocteau has met the president of the Goethe Institute here in Frankfurt, and he was this man told Cocteau that Proust was the unknown artist in Germany because he was adored, so people can avoid to read it because they adored it. It is a problem with Proust in France. People know very well the name, very well the story of the Madeleine. They know that it's a problem of remembrance, and that's all. That's okay. And in fact, the comic book is a very, I think it's a proper system to show to people that it's not complicated to read Proust. It's interesting, and comics try to allow people to discover disappeared things, like paintings and sculptings and streets, clothes. A lot of things would disappear, and it's not expensive. You know, making a landscape in a comic book is not expensive. And the movie, of course, it's very expensive.
So you would recommend your graphic novel to Proust, as an introduction to Proust?
Yes. Yes, I think that, in fact, at the beginning, I made these comic books for people who knew Proust in France. I wanted to say, oh, you love Proust, you will be interested to see the street where happens the phenomena of the Madeleine. You will be interesting to discover the place on the countryside where was the Temple Léonie, etc., etc. But in fact, my publisher was very surprised after 15 days after the publishing of the book to say, we have no more books. A lot of people bought it, and so I'm not a specialist of Proust enough. So there is another public and another type of readers, and these readers are most important, the readers who were afraid of Proust and who wonder and say, perhaps with the comic books I shall succeed in reading it. And people discovered that it was not difficult at all to read Proust, and that Proust was funny, and that Proust spoke about cooking and about art operas. I think yes, it helps people to discover Proust and to stop to be afraid of it.
I see. So in Germany we for long years had the problem that comics were seen as something low-level, pulp for children only.
Mm-hmm. Yes. In France too.
Oh,
in France it was the same thing during years and years. I remember when I read comics at home, my father punished me because it was for dumb people. He said, read serious things. And till the 1980, the comic strip was reserved for the guys and not for the girls, for the guys. And with stories of Western, heroic fantasy, science fiction, detective stories. And for the years, yes, 1980, was born a new type of comic strip written by girls like Annie Kotzinger, like Claire Bretéché, and like men who wrote so political stories, psychological stories, and now the comic strip has a very large spectrum of action, and there is a place for everything. There is, and what is very interesting is that there is a place also until for adventure, western, horror, fantasy, etc., but also for psychological story. It's very large.
I see. So here in Germany, we often looked with envy to France, because we say in France comic is part of a culture with Asterix and everything around it. And here in Germany we have such a hard stand to defend comics against the free justice system. So I understand that in France it's not that different, so it's part of a different view from afar.
Yes, but I think perhaps you are lucky. Perhaps you are lucky because in France the success of the adult comic strips allowed bad things to exist, and so you avoid this problem. Now in Germany, there is rather sudden, rather quick this discovering of the intellectual comic strip, and so there is a new place for good screenplayers. You know, in France, the great problem is not for drawers. We have a lot of wonderful drawers who draw very, very better draws than I can do. Of course, the problem is that we have no good screenplayers, a good story. As people say for the movies, if you want to have a good comic strip, you have first have a good screenplay, and second have a good screenplay. So draw is not very, very important, in fact, because you can draw with a lot of styles, a lot of what we call the traité. I could draw my comic book with other styles than this one. This one I choose it. It's a style like Hergé for Tintin, because I wanted the people in the library, when they will open the comic books, to say, "Oh, it seems simple like Tintin. So Proust is not difficult, you know." But I could draw like Crumb if I wanted. What was very interesting to do, what was capital, what was essential, was a screenplay.
That's an interesting point, because earlier on in the book fair we had a discussion between Isabel Kreitz and Per Meter, who did a graphic novel on Fritz Hamann, which was a mass murderer in the Weimar Republic.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a big scandal then because he worked for the police and therefore he was protected and could go on murdering.
Yes.
And so Per Meter, the author, also said that he mostly writes for the artist, so the artist can get his thoughts into the artwork, and he doesn't so much write for the public who reads the comic afterwards.
Yes, yes, it's exactly the subject. Exactly.
So to come back to Proust, you worked 12 years with Proust as of now.
Yes.
You probably will do so for many, many years.
Yes, if I live, I shall continue. Yes, to my project is 17 albums, and I made only 5. So I have still 12 albums to draw and to screenplay. Of course, I draw faster and faster. Of course, I know more and more the Proust opera, but it's long to draw, and this style is very, very long to draw, because you have to make all the traits, the contour. It's not like Reiser, I'm very pleased to live long enough to finish this project. Not because I want that people avoid to read Proust, and prefer my comic books. It's the contrary. I hope that people will read my comic books and the book. Perhaps it's better to read Proust and after to read my comic books, if they can, because it's funny to say, oh yes, he made that, oh, he didn't put this part, or oh yes, it is this kind of food Proust speaks about, oh, this painting is like that, was like that. So it can be funny. I think it's comment dire ça, a documentary job. And for people who are afraid by the length of La Recherche Temps Perdu, the comic strip is a good thing. For people who loved the book, it's a good thing too. No, I think that I want to speak to the more large public, and I think different people can be concerned by this comic book.
So you are not afraid that in years or decades from now you will wake up and say, oh, Proust again, why can't I do something different?
I made other things, you know, I work a lot. I made a book about Navy maritime text written by Stéphane about Magellan and Herman Melville with Moby Dick, etc. A book aux éditions Artaud Flammarion about 18 texts from Macor Blanc, etc., etc. So I stopped sometimes my comic book in order to breathe a little, and after I come back to my passion. It's my passion. But it's strange, it could be strange to die and I've only done one book.
Okay, so I think different.
Can I dedicate?
Sure, if you'd like to.
I have my pen. Can you give me? Shampoo, blue. You know, I want also to say a great thank you to Rosemary Knesbeck, my publisher. You know, I come in Germany for 10 years, and I was very surprised to speak with a lot of people who loved my comic books, who loved Proust, and not to be published. But I knew that the problem was that there was no market for this kind of product. And Rosemary Knesbeck, I spoke with her, and she said, I feel that's the moment. Something is changing in Germany with the comic books. And I am very proud to be at this moment with my book.
We're proud to have works such as yours in Germany.
Oh, thank you very much, thank you very much. And people are so kind. You can't imagine, you know, people for the dedication, the signature, people are very sympathetic. They speak with me, they, you know, I draw you Charles one. It's one of them, my preferred characters to draw. For whom?
My name is a little bit hard to...
Oh, Jesus.
You haven't seen mine.
Or you know, my name seems to be simple, Heuet, but everybody make a mistake, and in France they make H-U-E-T, not the E. So even if it is simple, perhaps it's very dangerous, because when I go to the administration for something, papers for the car, always say, no, we have not this name, we have not this name. So perhaps your name is interesting because people say, oh, it's difficult, so I have to read it slowly.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Yeah, I'm used to spelling it on the phone.
Yes.
My wife is Italian. I say my name in Italy. They ask me, you know, what's your name? What? Can you please stop?
Just call me Heuet.
That's what I was about to do because I already know.
Just sideburns.
Catherine calls me Marcel.
That's an interesting little story because when we put your photo from this discussion in the Comic Centrum to our webpage, we also had, oh, so that's Mr. Proust.
Oh yes, it was a
Because it was me. It was me.
I tell you a true story. That's a true story. When I arrived in Jakarta in Indonesia, when this book was published in Indonesia, in Masa, Indonesia, the journalist, where there is a press conference, and they said, Mr. Proust, Mr. Proust, Mr. Proust. And I said to the man of the translator and the man of the embassy, why do they call me Mr. Proust always and not my name, etc. And they speak, and they go, and so you're not Mr. Proust, but who is Mr. Proust? And I say Mr. Proust was the writer, but he's dead. And I discovered, that's true, that Proust is not published in Indonesia. So my comic book was the first contact of the Indonesian. I was very proud, very, very proud. It was funny, Mr. Proust. And in fact, the same thing for a lot of people in France. All right, that's Charles Swann, a great lover.
Thank you very much.